The talent shortages in the UK has always been there for at least a decade, if not more. Since COVID, the growth that the tech industry has experienced is the usual sort of growth you'd expect in a decade, so that those shortages became even more pronounced.
The people are just getting poached left, right and centre for stupid more money.
A small talent pool, and there is a lot of need, and most of us agency owners end up with empty chairs, which hurts more than anything else.
It's your job to make sure that you're integrating them culturally as well.
David and Bachir, hi, how are you both?
Hi, Chris.
Yeah, very well, thank you.
Good. So to set some context for the episode, I think it'd be really great to hear how you built your previous agency, Best Response Media, using this distributed teams model, because this was long before COVID, right? And what inspired that decision?
Yeah, good question. For us, it was merely the fact that it was hard to find good people. Our agency, take a step back, was started in 2009. We've been growing very fast year over year, and it got to a point that our biggest barrier to growth was just finding the talent. And I'm sure many people who run agencies will feel the same way, that this is probably one of the hardest things that they have to deal with on a day-to-day, is keep finding good people, replacing talents that leave because of typical churn, but also as you get more clients, you need more people. So we started looking at offshore sort of as a source of production talent, people like developers and QAs, probably 9 years ago. And from then, we realized that it was such a great way of finding good talent in a cost-effective way. And it's just snowballed since then. And we carried on growing our distributed teams overseas. In the beginning with development, then design, then projects management as a last sort of bastion that we always were a bit nervous about, because we had like a hybrid AM PM type role where they had a lot of clients contacts, and we thought, is it going to be a good thing to kind of introduce clients to people who are not based in the UK? This is pre-COVID, where people were thinking, people were more nervous about dealing with somebody who's not in the same country or the same town. But to our surprise, everyone was delighted, because we always made sure that the talent that we hired was top notch. They were very good people, good at what they do, spoke very well, good communication skills, and the clients just got the results they needed and wanted. So they were very happy to deal with somebody regardless of where they were based. That's pretty much how it went.
I think it's worth pointing out as well, like Bachir says, we started with development, and we learned the lessons, and we eventually got it to work really well, which was fantastic, because it meant we could hire really good quality developers much faster and at a much more affordable rate, as we could find them in London. At the time, and all the way through our agency, we were working with Magento, which became Adobe Commerce. At that time was when Magento was incredibly popular with clients with development agencies. So finding good Magento developers was really, really difficult. And then off the top of that, Bachir was always pushing me, enthusiastic about, but what about these other areas? And I'm naturally quite stubborn. So the next area he wanted to go was design. And I was like, no, design. London's the place for design. It's the best place in the world for design. We can't go anywhere else. And one day I came to Bachir with my tail between my legs after we'd been desperately trying to find a UX designer in London. I was like, I think I'm going to try looking. I'm going to try looking elsewhere. But to cut a long story short, we ended up building a design team in Serbia, and they were top class, really, really good. They stayed with us for an awful long time, and again, cost effective. So then it was a bit of a bigger light bulb moment for me to think, well, where else can we look to get more people? And it was the digital marketing team. So we looked at the SEO roles, technical SEO, outreach, content writers. And again, we built a digital marketing team across Serbia, Croatia, Romania. And then, like Bachir said, the final one was around the project managers and the client-facing people. And again, we were just struggling to find good PMs in London at a reasonable rate in a reasonable time frame. And we were just blown away by the quality. We were continually surprised about the education level, the English, the attitude, everything. It was just
The work
fantastic.
ethic, yeah. The work
Yeah,
ethic is
exactly.
a big one as well.
So
And by
did
the
you
time
have a
we
hub
sold,
in the UK? Did you have a hub that sort of then, to start with, that then branched out overseas?
Oh yeah, we had a big central London office, and we still had a core team here all the way to the end. The leadership team was all based in London. Pre-COVID, a little bit pre-COVID, the whole PM team was based in London. We had obviously lead developers and project leads, but slowly, it happened organically, but slowly our distributed teams became bigger than our London teams, and in due course we had literally just like a kernel of senior leadership and heads pretty much based in the UK, and the rest was almost all distributed over a period of time. And that was and COVID, I mean, again, when COVID hit, most companies never experienced working from home or being in lockdown, or for everybody it was something new. But for us, we always had sort of the process and the sort of the work processes, technology to kind of deal with this. So for us, it was just like obviously it wasn't easy, but because of
You were one step ahead of everyone else, basically, at that point.
yeah. But we were prepared for it. We could work very easily from home and from the office, and yeah, that served us very well.
So that first hire, I mean, what made you choose Serbia? I mean, how did that first hire come about? Because I think the first step in all of this for any agency looking to hire abroad,
The first step was not Serbia. The first step, we got it wrong many times before we got it right. It took a long time. We've tried various things, and yeah, there was a lot of try and error. I think the first one was in India, if I remember correctly, and that did not go well. Our interviewing process, our assessment process, everything, in the beginning, we didn't know many things that we know now, and we got a few of them wrong before we got it right. But in due course, we ended up having a very smooth process. We had people who kind of, their sole job is to always do outreach and find the right people, that we want to kind of approach. And we worked on our agency brand, so it's attractive to potential employees. That was a big deal. We worked on our assessment process, our onboarding. It's a whole thing. Eventually, it was a business within a business. That's how Prodigi came about. Eventually, we realized, hang on, we have a recruitment business within the agency, and that's when we split the two and opened that up to other customers and agencies.
So, and that's what you're doing now, right? So Prodigi, effectively, you're helping agencies and businesses source talent from development, marketing, design, etc., from overseas. Is that primarily the business model? Exactly.
We help agencies and other tech companies build distributed teams. Listen, the talent shortages in the UK has always been there for at least a decade, if not more. Since COVID, the growth that the tech industry has experienced in 2-3 years is the usual sort of growth you'd expect in a decade, so that those shortages became even more pronounced. And this seems to be the best solution for any company looking to level up in terms of talent and skills, to kind of grow, but also to grow margins and to be more profitable. So yeah, we started doing, that's how Prodigi came about, and now we're doing this full time, both me and David, and we help companies kind of do distributed better and build these teams.
So do you advise them through that whole process, do you? Because, I mean, like you said, those mistakes that you made early on, that's what scares all of us agency owners, right? But then at the same time, the business model, like you say, in terms of if you're hiring someone that's remote and they're 35 miles away, in London, for example, but are only willing to come to the office or come in and, once a month or once every 3 months, you may as well look further afield, is what you're saying, right? So.
Well, and funny enough, you should say that. We were just speaking to somebody yesterday, and they had a distributed, we have helped them build a distributor team, and he had a client's pitch, and he had to call some staff from Eastern Europe and some from Manchester, and I think the flight from the Eastern Europe was the same price as a train from Manchester.
Yeah, I can well believe it.
And it took about the same time as well, so that was quite funny. But yeah, it's exactly that. We understand our clients' businesses and understand, because everyone has a different setup, different needs, technologically, or even to do with data, or to do with the way they approach their clients. So we try to find solutions that fit each business differently, and we have a number of ways to distribute. It's not one thing, from the way you hire, which country you hire, EU versus non-EU. There's quite a bit to it. So we try to kind of create bespoke solutions for our clients to help them expand the distributed teams.
In terms of like, I think I've got a lot of questions, and I'm sure a lot of other people would as well. Like, how does things like tax work, pension, national insurance? How do all these, and benefits, for example, how do all they work with overseas workers?
Yeah, that's a great question. You need to treat overseas workers. You need to treat them exactly like you treat your UK employees. So you need to think of these things. Different approaches, different setups require. For example, if you are having just one or two remote workers in different countries, it doesn't make any sense to have a local entity there. So alternatives are either you treat them as freelancers, but from a legal point of view, so they handle their own taxes and everything, and you pay them a gross salary and they handle the rest of it.
They handle their own tax.
Or if you have more of a larger presence in a country, you can have your own entity and we can help you set that up and whatnot. Different countries present different tax regimes. They're all very different. And it also depends what are your needs in terms of like time zones, if you need to be kind of near shore versus further afield. For countries where you want to still have an employment contract with your employees, but you don't want to create an entity, there's also solutions for that, like employment of record companies, or employer of record companies rather. So yeah, there are various solutions. There's many routes, many ways to do it, and every single agency has a different or best route to do it. If you're looking for a very highly skilled somebody in something very niche, it's not going to be your choice really to go, actually I want them to be in this place and I want to do it this way. You go after where the talent is, and the talent can be anywhere. But if you're looking to build a hub in, say, I don't know, Bulgaria or something like this, then you have to kind of look at, the size of it, and you can create your own office. And so there are different, the spectrum is very wide, and there is a right solution for different businesses.
Yeah, an important point to touch upon as well is Bashir mentioned about hiring them as a freelancer. Sometimes when we speak to people the first time, they say things like, "Oh, we don't like to outsource," or "Working with freelancers can make us a bit nervous." And this was our experience firsthand. They're only freelancers or contractors in the legal sense of the word, but spiritually they're part of the team. They consider themselves to be an employee. They work for you full time. They're there 40 hours a week, 5 days a week, or whatever your time frame is. It's your job to make sure that you're integrating them culturally as well. And there's loads of things you can do. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, for example, because we ended up having people in about 8 or 9 countries, plus the UK. So, say once a quarter we'd do like company socials. We just do little things that, say we're going to go bowling. Everybody goes bowling in their local area. We obviously give them a budget, and if they're there on their own, they can bring a friend or a partner or whatever. Then we take photos and share stuff on Slack, so it's almost like a virtual get together. And we do the same things with Christmas and other sort of important times of the year. And all these little things, along with having Slack channels for because everybody watches the same programs and reads the same books and watches the same films now. So there's always these common points of interest for us to actually have a bit of a water cooler moment, and that stuff really works. And then the big thing we would do once a year was bring everybody together for a global meetup. So we'd pick somewhere fairly central, whether that was like Morocco or Greece or somewhere, and we'd have a few days of, a bit of a mini conference and team building stuff, and then lots of fun and just team bonding. And it was, worked phenomenally well in just boosting that morale, making people feel they're part of the company, being able to have a voice and give opinions on things. Another big thing as well, actually, we used to do these quarterly retros. So obviously if you're doing agile project delivery, whether it's a week or 2 weekly sprints, and you have the daily stand-ups and then you do retros on those, and that's all great. But what we decided to do was much broader company retros every quarter. And the purpose of that was anything's on the table to talk about. It's not just project specific. So we'd send out a questionnaire maybe a couple of weeks before the date, give people a few nudges, and we tended to get about an 80% response rate, which is pretty good. And then we would basically pick the top 3 things which either were the most common or we thought, oh, these are things we need to address. And it would be a big open forum of everybody getting together on the video and go, a bit of an intro. Let's talk about some stuff we can celebrate, and then let's go. What are the things we spoke about the last quarter? Who's been made accountable for them, and how much have we progressed? And what are these 3 things we want to talk about? And me and Bachir would gradually just try and take a bit of a back seat and let there be a bit more of a self-governing thing, so people can speak out, give their ideas, volunteer. Do you know what? This is a thing that we that maybe I can take on and look at, whether it's creating a new process document or a new report or something like that. And again, it's a simple, very easy thing to do, but it has massive value in just bringing people together, and those remote people feeling like, oh, actually, my voice is valued here. I'm not just a hired resource churning out copy or whatever it is. I'm actually part of a bigger thing, and I'm part of growing this company.
Yeah, because I think if, your initial gut instinct would be look at delivery teams, or look at people that, like you say, a copywriter or something, rather than an integral part of your team, like a part of your leadership team or project manager, for example, that's pulling it all together. It feels easier to sort of outsource, or not outsource, but overseas to a specific skill that can just deliver the work. So I guess in terms of that first step, is that what you see most companies do as a sort of a safe first bet? Or
well, to be honest with you, I think most companies will jump into it when their back is against the wall, which is a shame. Most companies will wait until, I need somebody who could do this thing and I can't hire, and I've had this empty seat for a period of time, and I'm going to start hurting either because my staff are getting overworked or my clients are getting annoyed because there's going to be delays. What I advise people is to kind of be proactive with it and look into it and take time to kind of do it and do it properly. Build the processes that are needed to support a distributed team. It's not just somebody you kind of set them on their way and start sending them tasks via email. It's a little bit more than that. But that said, remote working is a reality. Most companies are now, if not mostly remote. So it's not new to anybody. Most companies have done it. Some companies have done it well. Some companies have had some bad experiences and are a little bit more nervous about doing it again. But the majority of people we're talking to have already some distributed in some capacity or another, and they want more of it. So for those who have never attempted, I think they're going to need to, because it's a competitive advantage to kind of have a greater talent pool than just whatever is close to your geographical location. As I said earlier, it's an opportunity to level up and compete better.
No, I think, like you say, most agencies, like ours included, we're in, just north of London, and COVID allowed us to suddenly widen our talent pool, and we've now got people around the country. They're all in the UK. Mm-hmm. But like you say, at the moment, we're near London, and you're looking at a team member perhaps that wants a London wage. They want to live in a suburb of London, and that's a very expensive wage. But what are the benefits now of hiring someone in Edinburgh or Glasgow or Serbia? And you've got to weigh up that, I think, as an option. I was looking at the WOW benchmark report, and apparently 44% of agencies started hiring remote as a result of COVID. So I think everyone's embraced it completely. But I think, what are the when it comes to collaboration and building that team spirit, then, like you say, you did those sort of quarterly meetups and things like that. How important is it to sort of, really get the rest of the team on board, and what activities and stuff would you recommend, or processes would you recommend that teams can do to really integrate that, especially as people are moving further apart?
It's a good question. I think first things first, you need to make sure that your team, wherever they are, there is a cross-pollination of knowledge, and agencies all, especially when there is a more junior members of staff that need to learn, and normally in an office they'll be sitting next to somebody asking questions. So you need to create as many of those pathways for communication as possible, whether I don't want to kind of, advertise any specific tool, but things like Slack or your project management tools and various things. You need to make sure from a technology point of view, your technology stack is there to support good, efficient communication and learning from each other. And if it means creating putting time on a diary to have, sharing experiences on projects, things that will just happen naturally if you're in an office environment. People will talk about what they're doing. You need, as an agency owner, to think, what are these things? Am I missing out on some of that sort of? And if you do that, and you do that regularly and in a good way, then your team will feel close, even though they're far, even though somebody, whatever they might be. Onboarding process is crucial. When you onboard somebody, again, when they're in the office, they can come and ask questions. You need to have a solid process for that, especially if they are based remotely. From a work point of view, you need to make sure that the sort of the managerial or the managers within the agency, people who are looking after remote staff. Sometimes your managers themselves might be remote based. How are they assessing people for performance, but also an output, but also for well-being, and whether they're happy and having their voice heard, like David was saying earlier. So it's a whole thing. There's a whole process that needs to be created, but then reviewed regularly. Speak to your people, wherever they are, and tell them what is working, what is not working, and act on those things. And by giving people voice, that is really what creates culture within a company. It's not like a pool table in a room or whatever it is. It's people having a voice and being heard.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's so important, isn't it? Because the danger you've got is as more people work remote, the only things that become important are the work that they're doing. If they're not in that culture, they're just going to work from home for the highest bidder, right? It doesn't matter who they work for.
Exactly. And by sharing the bigger picture with your staff, for example, I don't know, if you are an SEO agency, you want to achieve certain objectives, or you want to win certain awards, or you want to be the best at something, tell them this and tell them what does success look like, what are our objectives, and make them see that whatever they're doing right here is contributing to the whole thing, for the whole, and by having that, they will be part of the team in a more meaningful way, for sure.
Yeah, but also one point on the point about working from home for highest bidder, that is so much more acutely felt in the UK, in the major cities. There's a lot of research that's gone into this, and essentially everybody has a limit to how much money they need to have an impact on their happiness and satisfaction. And once you go beyond the limit, it's not actually going to have any more of an impact on their well-being. The problem is, like you've already mentioned, London's very expensive, as are most of the UK cities now. So if you're in London and you're earning, 50, 60k, and someone comes and offers you another 10 grand, you're going to jump at them because it's going to have such a massive impact to your livelihood.
Well, the only thing that's going to change is the work that you're doing, right?
Yeah, exactly. But if you're in somewhere like Belgrade or or somewhere in Romania or something like that, these wages they're already very nice, and you can already live a very nice life there. So as long as the company's nice that you're working for, and you're being treated well, and you feel like you're part of this bigger thing, and you're loving the work and the clients and all the rest of it. I know it's not all 100% perfect, but more often than not, then these hammerings that they're getting, they're not going to respond even to maybe a few more grand offer, because it's like, well, I don't need any more money. Obviously, I'd like annual pay rises and things like that, but I'm not desperate for the next thing, because I'm living a fantastic life and I'm enjoying what I do. And that was another thing we noticed. I mean, our retention rates were phenomenal. It was over 5 years because of all this stuff that we did, and because we didn't have that pressure on, the big network agency around the corner offering them 20 grand on their.
Well, it's the biggest threat. Honestly, it's the biggest threat right now to us agencies. Is that the people are just getting poached left, right, and centre for stupid more money that you can't.
Yeah, it's like musical chairs. There's a lot more chairs than there are people. It's reverse musical chairs. So there's like a small talent pool, and there is a lot of need, and most of us agency owners end up with empty chairs, which hurts more than anything else.
But are we in danger of creating that problem, making it worse? Because how do you then develop your own talent remotely? I think that's a big challenge, and it's a scary challenge, because if you're bringing someone in with no knowledge, you absorb so much information, and all those learnings come from what's going on around you. And, how do we stop that just dying, this whole generation of new execs and new people coming through, this new talent, because we're then having to pay more money to recruit more senior people because we can't train them, or we're having to move abroad? I mean, what are your views on that?
I think it's about proactive, strategic thinking. We know, anybody who's been running an agency for a certain amount of time knows and can forecast the level of growth they're going to be experiencing and what is the team of next year. What does next year team, or what does it need to look like? And instead of waiting until somebody hands in their notice or, winning that big projects before starting the hire, I think, a bit of forward thinking where you think to yourself, okay, I need to grow this team at least by like 5-6 members by next year, or 10 members or 2 members or whatever it is. And I know that somebody who's good, within a year, they can start kind of producing good work.
Yeah.
So I can start then hiring grads and training them, even if their output is going to be just helping in the beginning, but with a view that maybe in 6 months to a year, these people are going to be actually productive team members, and they can be remote as well, or they can be whatever it is, and they start learning from, so creating your own, sort of training your own people and preparing them for what you need next year. And that's what I advise most people, and that's what we've done.
Exactly. Sorry, Bashir. I was just going to say, and that's what we did as well. So we built a fairly large development team, among others, where we would have that pyramid structure of the seniors, the mids, and the juniors, and we bring in juniors with the view that we're not actually going to be able to get any billable work from them for a while, but we'll be training them in the background. And obviously, again, it's cost effective if you're growing your own homegrown talent. But the point is, you can grow your own homegrown talent remotely as well as in the UK.
Yeah, because I think there is a squeeze as well, obviously, especially with the economic climate at the moment. With as an agency, I mean, I did it in the early days. Used to hire first, right, and then win the business second. But then, as you become wise to it, you sort of think, well, I've got to try and win the business first, and then fill the seats. But then you've got to get that blend right. You've always got to have this always on recruitment so that you're ready. But I think, to develop the next generation, like you say, and bringing these people through, you've almost got to overinvest now and get the talent in there first, right? Because that's going to protect you longer term.
100%. And Chris, I can tell you, if there's one thing that I say, in my opinion, is the worst thing an agency owner can do, is rush hires. Rush hires are more expensive. Rush hires, you tend to take what you can get as opposed to what you really want. And by thinking a little bit long term and being a bit strategic, you'll be hiring a little bit more cost effectively. You'll be bringing in sort of very good talent that you can build into what you need it to be. And your margins will be higher, but also you'll have good, more reliable people. But it's all about taking the time ahead of when you need it and start forecasting those needs, those people needs, and those talent needs, and acting on them ahead of you needing them.
I think the problem is we're in this situation where, like you say, with the best will in the world, you plan, but you've got recruiters taking your team, and then you're having to hire in a hurry to try and fill those gaps again, aren't you? And it's all getting a bit messy, really, in terms of panic hires at times, and then they're not working out, and then you're wasting a big recruitment fee on someone that might leave at the end of their probation or whatever. It's really tough.
We've been victims of that as well, and I'm working with a lot of clients now, both David and I, and I can tell you, if you start thinking a little bit more strategically and thinking, okay, in 6 months I'm going to need this many people, and you start doing outreach in advance. So even when you have to do a rush hire, because like for an SEO agency, I don't know, some of them might need 1 or 2 people almost every single month. So if you constantly kind of doing the outreach, you will never find yourself in a situation where, like, I need to go to market today, and I need to. If you're working on your brand identity and things like LinkedIn, and you're an attractive employer, it's a lot easier to find good people, and also working with the right partner where the recruitment fees are not going to be too prohibitive. We don't believe that a recruitment fee should be like a big sort of punch in the liver that hurts you so much that you don't want to see a recruiter again. It should be kind of staggered. Rebate period should be over a whole 12-month period, for example. That's what we offer at Prodigi. So things that will make this more durable and a real viable solution, as opposed to something where you just kind of stop the hemorrhage of people and find somebody immediately.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. I mean, recruiters must be having a field day right now. It's making a lot of money in the UK, especially. But like you say, that I think to an employer, you want that backup, because, like I said, they're always getting approached every single day. Your team is going to be getting approached by recruiters, so you've got to have that backup plan. And also, it's in danger of becoming a very high cost. So a solution, what's the solution? One is, like you say, train your own talent. The other is this option, which is perhaps start looking further afield.
And for key employees, I mean, one other thing that I would advise is for people to kind of develop some sort of internal processes to assess who's at risk of leaving, what employees are not particularly happy. There is a lot of signs to tell when somebody is not, as engaged as they need to be. They're not engaged in any long-term projects. They come right on time and leave right on time. They're not taking an interest in anything strategic about the business. Potentially, delays in answering, whatever it is, and identifying those people who are at risk of leaving and having honest conversations. Are you happy here? Or if you think that that's going to happen, and start preparing, especially if it's key employees looking after big accounts or any accounts, or doing any meaningful work. You kind of, as a team and within the managerial structure of your business or your agency, you need to kind of have something to listen out for these signals that could signify that somebody's about to pick up and leave, so you're not left on the lurch last minute.
And I think one of the really interesting things we spoke about last time we spoke was about sort of maybe using these hubs, wasn't it? So perhaps picking a geographic location and sourcing talent there. And I think that's a great way of expanding almost internationally, isn't it? I mean, what's your experience of that? Are there any particular hubs in Europe that people could look at?
There are many, and again, it really depends on what your needs are and what sort of talent you need for your agency. But I always like to think that first steps is to hire remotely and distribute it. But then if it's going to become meaningful in terms of scale, it makes sense to have them close to each other in one place. Even if they work, semi-remotely, then you can create more of a culture around somewhere else, having a second location. And then you have more of an opportunity to kind of nurture talent, like we said earlier, sort of grads, and bring them up through the ranks. There are a lot of places. And again, you don't want to be going to the place where everyone has gone. What happens is like what happens everywhere. Somewhere becomes popular, and then everyone goes there and pushes the prices up. So you have to look out for. But there's so many places that are good, with good universities and good clusters of knowledgeable people in various skills. You just need to kind of identify where are those places for you as an agency.
Yeah, what was interesting, Poland was probably one of the big ones in recent years, where what it meant was so many more companies went, and larger international companies went and set up operations there, and that has a massive impact on the availability of talent and obviously the salaries as well. But saying that, there's still so much more of a spread across the locations where you can still find good people, good universities, well educated. So while we might have some countries, depending on the types of roles that we would probably start to look at, our resources, that is, we won't be too fixated on one particular location, because obviously it just depends on, we're doing a lot of resourcing all the time, and it might be like, oh, well, actually we're finding a load of really cool people in Croatia at the moment, or Romania. And then there's other just local things that can have an impact, like Serbian taxes are very, very high, and the government more recently has been cracking down a lot more on people that are doing contracting locally. In the same way that we had IR35 here, there's been similar things there. So it's still a good place to look, and we're still finding people from there. But the thing is, it's changed a little bit, so it might not always be our first port of call now when we're looking for people. And so it's also just having a partner who's a bit more tuned into what is going on locally, that we can kind of give that advice about where to start looking.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's why it's so important to use someone like yourselves, right, as a third party, because going into this blind, like you say, is the legalities of it and what benefits and what areas are good, and do they have laws, and how does the tax impact you, etc. I think that's
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of complexities, and we can help companies with that. But even we don't see certain things happening, like Ukraine. I mean, we did not see that happen.
We had someone in Ukraine, and we had a conversation with him the day before the invasion, and we'd have many conversations with him up to that point, because we were obviously worried and wanted to make sure he was okay. It was like, no, I'm not worried. We live under this threat. We've had this. This has been a constant thing. We don't worry about this. And then the next day, things actually did change. So it was unexpected, even really to the people that were there. They really didn't think it was going to happen.
Are people still working in obviously still working in Ukraine? But I mean,
we have a lot of people that have moved out of Ukraine. They're still working for their employers. They're still working for our clients. But a lot of them have managed to get out and go different places. Some of them are still there, but yeah, I mean, nobody's going to be rushing to put any hubs in there because the situation is uncertain. But
sure,
yeah.
And then in terms of like client perceptions, I think that's one of the other sort of obstacles that would like to think, again, as an agency owner, hello, this is, a new person. They're the other side of Europe. How do you address? Is that still a thing? Is that what people still perceive?
I think it's something that, we were really nervous about initially. And in the very early years, we used to do everything we could just to try and shield it from the clients. But actually, as time went on and we saw the quality, there's nothing to be ashamed of. These are quality people delivering quality work. And I think now it's about lead with your front foot. This is your new person. They're based in Belgrade or where it is. They are very, very good. They know this is their level of expertise. Maybe they're a technical SEO and they're really up to point. There's a Google Core algorithm update yesterday, and they've already been giving us a full download on it before we've even seen it on Search Engine Journal. Or maybe they're a GA4 expert and they know, it's a very short supply skill at the moment, and it's something they know a lot about. So if they're good and you put them in front of a client, by the end of that call, the client's going to be like, they're amazing. If they can't justify their existence, it should be the same whether they're in Croatia or whether in London. As long as you're putting good people in front of them, the clients really, that's all they care about. And because of the fact that everybody's working from home now, and clients as much as agencies, and clients, they want to be doing video meetings as much as everyone else. They kind of think of like, well, we're all in an office here and that person's just in on video. That's not even a consideration anymore.
Well, it's not anymore, is it? I mean, I think that's the thing, is especially in SEO, India and design development. India was always, this booming place. But if all of a sudden you said all our people are now in India, they instantly think that you're saving money and you're taking a cheap.
So that's the thing. You're absolutely right. It's about kind of making sure that the client sees the benefit of them. Somebody who's not in the UK. If you focus on client delights and your customer being delighted with the outputs that you're producing as an agency, and if it's a step up from what they're getting, then I think, in our experience, there's a lot of anecdotes of the first time we had a PM or AM person kind of in front of the client. We didn't want to do it ourselves. We literally had to because somebody was off or whatever it is. And one of the PMs who was supposed to kind of be just a second line PM behind the lines, kind of covering the Jira and the project management tools. And we had to get him to cover for somebody for a few days or a week or something like that. And I remember the clients calling me and saying, you know what, can we keep this project manager? He's so much better and we're really happy with him. And from then on, we thought, okay, well, yeah, it's not a thing. As long as, and that's for client-facing roles. For your customer-facing roles, typically you want somebody who has the right type of personality as well. So the same way you assess a client-facing person who's based in the UK, you do the same assess and make sure they're good for you as an agency.
That's brilliant. So how do people get started on this then? How say I'm looking now, okay, I want to build out one of my teams, come to you guys. How would we start working together?
Well, we'll have a discovery session first to understand what are the areas that you're looking, where you have the most kind of shortages or you need the most people more urgently. And then giving you some options, tackling those. Obviously, we'll look into kind of, if it's developers, do they have access to kind of data? Do they have to be in the EU or not? Is it a specialist area or not? And we'll come up with some solutions for you. And then once we deal with the urgent stuff, then we'll hopefully start working with you on taking a more proactive talent mapping approach to talent acquisition in the future.
We can also help identify areas that you may not have even considered. Sometimes not even just remotely or not, but like at all, because, having run an agency, a tech business for 14 years, we've hired a lot of different types of people. We've done a lot of different internal exercises to determine new roles that should be hired. We used to do job audits at least a couple of times a year where we'd get an entire team in a room and we'd just repeatedly ask them, what do you like about your job? What don't you like about your job? Tell us all the tasks that you're doing, and it's down to the nth degree. Then we'll go away and look at it. And the first time we did that with the project management team, they were doing 6 jobs. They are more on the higher end of the salary scale. So as well as being PMs and AMs, which was a fairly tightly knit role, they were doing QA, they were doing first line support, they were doing data entry, they were doing some technical SEO. It was crazy. So we went off and spun up a QA team, and we spun up a first line support team, much cheaper salaries, and also people that are specialists in that area. The PMs were able to take on more clients, and they were happier because they were just doing the things that they wanted to do. and the other teams were happy and so on. So these are also the kind of insights that we can lend as well with clients. Sort of looking at roles, it's so common that we speak to people where their devs are doing too much QA or whatever, and it's like you really shouldn't be doing that because they're not going to enjoy it, and you're spending more money.
And they're too expensive to be spending their time on that. Mm.
But isn't that goes back to the, not being able to recruit, I guess, more junior people, isn't it, during COVID? Is that
Yes,
a result of that?
partly that, and partly because people didn't take the time. We know how running an agency goes. You just kind of, sometimes it just feels like going from fire to fire, from acquiring a client to kind of making sure a client is happy, to making sure, the next crisis or the next big thing that, so the priority list is so long that certain things stay on the bottom when they're so crucial to your growth and to your success as an agency. And it's one of the things that will help you kind of have a better organization.
So going back to those agency days, is that, what made you get out of owning agency? Why did you decide to pack the bags up there and go into this?
It's something that, we've done it for a long time. We had a lot of approaches, and then one day it was the right approach that we felt for us. This is what we built this for. It's time to kind of, capitalize on all the work that we've done. And I think every agency owner hopefully thinks about building something they can exit eventually. Maybe not. Maybe they want to just keep doing it indefinitely. I don't know. For us, it was just about getting a good proposition. And we started already working on Prodigi 3 years prior.
So you kind of had this on the back burner. That was kind of part of the exit plan, was it?
Exactly. So we had that already kind of starting to take shape, and we thought, what, we'd love to do this. So we're still in the agency world, we're still working in the tech industry, but this is something that we see carries, a lot of potential, that we'd like to kind of invest our efforts in this for the next, 10, 15 years again.
Mm. Yeah. That's clever because, building that in-house recruitment is obviously, it solves one of the problems, doesn't it, straight away? You've got the pick of the talent and everything else, and then, like you say, you've built this in the background. You can then specialise that as a whole new business.
Yes, and it's something that what I like about it is it really helps organisations solve a real problem. For us, that was the biggest problem before we got good at this. The biggest problem was finding good people and finding them quickly enough. That was really the thing that stressed us the most. When you win a project and the head of development says, well, I haven't got enough people to develop this, I need another 2 or I need another 3 or 4 members of the team, and I need them now, otherwise there are going to be delays. And you think, like, God, I'm going to have to go and find people and pay recruitment fees and interview, and still these people might turn up to be good or not. So that was a real big problem for us. And when we solved it, I thought, can you imagine if we can help other people, sleep better at night from at least about this particular issue.
There just isn't enough talent in the UK at the moment, and whether that gets better or not, I think is going to take a bit of time. I think what COVID has done has kind of almost halted a generation there, 2 or 3 years worth perhaps, of people coming into the industry at the levels they were, and it's made the situation, especially on top of the demand going up. It's something's, you've got to find a new solution, right? And freelance is one. Perhaps it gives agencies that opportunity to suddenly say that they're global, I suppose, by having someone. You've seen that all the time, haven't you? PO box in a different country, and all of a sudden they've got a foreign office. But I think like having the option to have those hubs as well overseas is a real opportunity for people to actually go into new territories and new markets as well. So I think it's.
No, totally. And the benefits are endless. You think about it, there's the benefit obviously from a cost saving point of view, from having best talents quicker, but there's also, if you are, for example, for you, Chris, you're in SEO, having multilingual staff could be very useful.
Yeah, and again, we're getting more and more demand for that. So actually, it makes sense in a lot of ways, definitely.
And a lot of these at least in Europe, a lot of these tech talent, they're polyglots. They speak 3-4 languages. I spoke to one recently. I was shocked. They were fluent in like 4 or 5 different languages, and German, French, whatever. And I thought, okay, well, this could be useful for an SEO company because a lot of e-commerce clients potentially have multilingual, multi-location, national sites that need to be kind of looked after, and if you could build new capabilities, that could be also positive for sure.
Cool. Well, thank you very much for coming on. It's been really, really interesting talking to you both.
Thank you.
Chris. Thanks for having us.
Nice one. Cool. Thank you. You've been listening to Confessions of an Agency Owner with me, Chris Ailey. You can connect with me on LinkedIn, subscribe to my newsletter, and find out more about my agency at honchosearch.com. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Until next time.